Good afternoon, I'm TK, and this is TK's video blog. Good to have you with us, good to see you all again. Welcome. Alright, now that we got that out of the way, let's get right down to it, shall we, and review our movie of the day. This week's movie is Reagan. The movie stars Dennis Quaid, David Henry, Penelope Ann Miller, Mina Savari, John Voight, Trevor Donovan, Alexander Krupa, Justin Chadwin, Sean Hankinson, Dan Lauria, Darcy Lynn, Kevin Sorbo, and Derek Richardson. So, what's the movie about? Well, this movie, it is a biopic, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a straight-up biopic, but it is, of course, about President Ronald Reagan, hence the name Reagan, and his rise to the presidency, his first failed presidential run, then his comeback and eventual election to the presidency. Also, the movie touches upon his time as an actor and the governor of California. Now, this movie, of course, also deals with, in large part, Reagan and how he managed to secure peace with the Soviets, primarily Mr. Mikhail Gorbachev, as in, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. The movie is told from the perspective of the Soviets. So, let's talk about the movie a little more in depth now, shall we? So, the plot of the movie, it's an interesting plot. It's a very historical movie. It's about Ronald Reagan, of course, and that's interesting. I like history movies like that. But what's more interesting about the plot for me is the framing device, how it's told, which it's told through the perspective, from the perspective, I should say, of an ex-KGB agent, Soviet officer. And that is interesting. That's jarring at first. Takes you kind of by surprise a little bit, and you're kind of thinking, what's going on here? But it's interesting. I like it, and it's just good. It keeps my attention. It caught my attention from the beginning. It keeps my attention throughout. As it goes along, you kind of are like, okay, this makes sense. Why this is going this way, why it's told this way. Of course, that ex-KGB agent officer is played by John Voight, and that's an interesting character as well. He is good in that role, John Voight is. And yeah, that's just a very interesting framing device, a very interesting way the plot is told. The movie is also told using flashbacks at certain points, and while that technique can get very jarring and can get very confusing, it doesn't in this case. And I like that, so that's great as well. One warning about the plot for any children who might go see it, it is a little bit mature because it does cover the assassination attempt of Ronald Reagan, and that is in there. I mean, it has to be in there, but that is a warning for any kids who might go see it. That might be a little sensitive, but I mean, it had to be in there. I mean, there was no way around it. But one interesting thing about that is that when Reagan went in for surgery and he woke up and he saw the doctors looking over him, he said, "Oh, please tell me you're all Republicans." And the doctor said, the lead doctor said, "Today, Mr. President, we're all Republicans." One interesting part of the plot, one interesting part of the movie is when Reagan is in talks with Mr. Gorbachev and the talks aren't going well, he gets up and he leaves the room, opens the door, then comes back in and kind of resets the scene, an old theater trick he learned to kind of reset the negotiations, reset the talks. And it actually works in this case, and that was an interesting thing to see in the movie, interesting to see how he brought his theater knowledge, his acting career knowledge to bear in the presidency. That was really interesting to me as well. It's worth noting, a tie into the title of this video blog, Reagan was actually nicknamed the Crusader by some people. So that's where the title for this video blog comes from, the Caped Crusader. So the plot is a very interesting plot, historical, and it's told from a very unique perspective, and I like it. I like how it's put together, I like how it's stitched together, it makes sense to me, and it's just really good overall and really interesting overall. Now, the cast in the movie's very well cast. Now, Dennis Quaid as Ronald Reagan, I was a little concerned from the previews that he wasn't going to have the right tour de force to play Reagan, but seeing the movie, I was 100% wrong on that. Yes, I know, shocking I was wrong, but yes, I was wrong. He is really good in that role, great voice, great mannerisms, and just he really brings the power that you need in that role. So Dennis Quaid, fantastic. John Voight, of course, as I mentioned earlier, again, he's really good in his role, quite interesting. The rest of the cast, I mean, really well cast, really believable. You really buy what they're selling, if you will, and that is what's key with actors. I've talked about it in a couple of the video blogs here over the past couple weeks, and the believability aspect is there, and you just really believe what they're selling, you believe their emotions, you believe their heart, and it just works. They're really well cast, and they just fit perfectly their roles. As far as the lighting in the movie goes, the lighting fits the tone of the movie overall. It's more hopeful, it's brighter, so that works. The editing, as you know, that is a very big thing for me. That is done well, it's very well put together, good flow, stitched together quite well. The flashbacks, that framing device, that works. It could get confusing, but it doesn't. So the editing is very good, very concise, and it just flows well. It has a good rhythm to it. So I would give the editing very high marks. The music in the movie works as well. It fits the tone of the movie, which is more optimistic, more hopeful. So that is good as well. I give that very high marks as well. The only thing I wasn't crazy about in the movie, it ends with talking about Reagan's Alzheimer's and detailing his struggles with it and his eventual passing of it. And so that I wasn't crazy about because it kind of made it more somber and made it a little more sad. You left on a sadder note, while the movie itself was more optimistic overall and hopeful in general. So that is the only issue I might take with the movie, but that's really nitpicking because overall the movie was really good and I really liked it. I mean, everything gels in it. So yeah, I mean, other than that little nitpick, really good movie. So now, the moment of truth. What would I give the movie out of 20 and would I recommend it to y'all? I think I would have to give the movie a 20 out of 20. Here's why. Because while the movie, it does have to have some politics attached to it, it doesn't really delve too much into the politics, into the Republican versus Democrat, right versus left thing. It doesn't really delve too much into that. It stays more neutral, and I like that, and that's really interesting and really good, again, because there's politics that goes with it, but it doesn't really get too much into that. And I like that. That's where it really puts it over the edge for me and gives it a 20. Now, there's a quote in the movie that really kind of captures what I just said, and it's a real quote. Now, I might not have it exactly right word for word, but it's very, very close to this. And it's what Reagan said to the former Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, when they first met. And it's this. Reagan said, "Mr. Speaker, until 5 o'clock, we're political rivals. After 5 o'clock, we're just two Irishmen who love drinking whiskey." And that really epitomizes what the movie does, which is it takes the politics out of it and makes it more neutral, makes it more Americans, makes it more like middle of the road and less political. And that is really good. I give that very high marks, and that is what really gives it a 20 out of 20. Now, aside from that, casting great, framing device interesting, great, a little jarring at first, as I said, but it makes sense. Editing great, everything works, nice flow, nice pacing, it just all works. Everything works in it. There's nothing really bad about the movie. As I said, the only thing that I would nitpick would be the tone it ended on with the Alzheimer's, but that was unavoidable. You had to do that. But other than that, I mean, really good movie, fantastic movie, 20 out of 20, and I would absolutely recommend watching it. Really good movie. Definitely watch it. Alright, well, looking at my watch, it looks like we're about out of time. So please, until next week, remember, I'm pointing at the comment section now. You can comment on this blog. What did you like? What didn't you like? What would you like to see me do differently? I don't know. I'd like to hear from you all. I really would. Also, please remember, you can comment on a movie, TV show, book, song, anything you want me to review, and perhaps I'll review it for you all right here on TK's video blog. Now, I can't always promise you'll like the review and agree with everything in the review. What I can promise you all is that I will always keep it fair and I will always keep it honest. That is my commitment to you all, as always. So, with that being said, until next week, take care, be safe, and goodbye everyone. Have a great weekend. I'll see you right back here next week.